Space did not simply tear, it screamed. The abyssal sky above the ruined cosmos shattered like fragile glass, raining jagged shards of purple lightning upon the desolate battlefield. The 5 Dark Generals, ancient beings who had only moments ago reveled in the rotting of the 12 universes, suddenly froze. The infinite, regenerative energy of the void that fueled their arrogance thickened, suddenly heavy, suffocating, and cold. A silhouette stepped through the bleeding rift, carrying with it the undeniable, crushing scent of a freshly consumed galaxy. It was Goku, but the golden light of hope that once defined the Saiyan warrior was gone. In its place stood the Void Dragon God, his jet-black scales drinking the surrounding light, deep purple veins pulsing across his musculature like rivers of raw, forbidden destruction. He did not take a fighting stance. He merely opened his eyes, 2 piercing pools of abyssal violet, and the fabric of reality wept in terror. Before the absolute darkness consumes the light of creation forever, witness the dawn of the Void Dragon. Stay with us, lest this forbidden history be erased by the very gods who fear it. Space did not merely open, it surrendered. The dimensional rift that tore across the rotting sky of the 12th universe was not a portal, but an unhealing wound in the fabric of reality itself. From the crushing blackness of that abyssal tier stepped a figure, and with his first footfall, the cosmic hum of existence went completely, terrifyingly silent. The 5 Dark Generals, ancient, immortal abominations born from the primordial nothingness, felt something they had not experienced since the dawn of time, the suffocating, paralyzing weight of gravity. The infinite, regenerative void energy that composed their very flesh suddenly felt dense, stagnant, and disobedient. It was no longer theirs to command. It belonged to him. Goku emerged, but the warrior from Earth was gone. The radiant, golden warmth that had once inspired mortals and commanded the respect of the divine had been extinguished, traded for a necessary, unspeakable evil. He was the Void Dragon God now. His physical form was a monument to the ultimate sacrifice, clad in jet-black, indestructible scales that seemed to drink the meager light of the dying stars around him. Deep, luminescent purple veins pulsed across his heavily armored musculature, glowing with the horrific, churning energy of a devoured galaxy. To stabilize the catastrophic fusion of creation and destruction, he had been forced to consume billions of souls, swallowing a dead cosmos to anchor his own existence. That incomprehensible weight emanated from him not as Kai, but as a localized singularity, a gravitational pressure so intense it warped the visual space around his silhouette. There was no heroic battle cry. There was no stance taken, no aura flared in a display of martial pride. Goku simply stood in the shattered sky, his massive, spiked tail hanging motionless behind him, his draconian features locked in a mask of absolute, chilling apathy. He slowly opened his eyes. They were no longer the fierce, determined eyes of a Saiyan, nor the tranquil silver of divine instinct. They were twin pools of abyssal violet, vertical slits of pure, unadulterated judgment. When his gaze fell upon the 5 Dark Generals, the remaining planets in the sector physically shuddered, their crusts cracking under the atmospheric dread. For a fraction of a second, the multiverse held its breath. The tragic irony of the moment was written into the very stars. The greatest defender of life had become its most terrifying apex predator. The hero who had once offered a healing hand to his most bitter rivals now radiated a malice so profound it dwarfed the demons standing before him. The boy from Mount Paozu was hopelessly entombed beneath layers of cosmic duty and forbidden power. He had chosen damnation so that existence itself could have a tomorrow. Unable to withstand the psychological crushing of Goku's presence, the vanguard commander of the Dark Generals snapped. With a guttural, reality-distorting roar, the ancient entity launched itself forward, unwilling to accept that its own element had been mastered by a mortal usurper. The general condensed the dark matter of 100 collapsed suns into a single, jagged spear of pure void energy, thrusting it directly at Goku's chest with a speed that defied the laws of time. The strike carried enough annihilating force to erase a macrocosm instantly. Goku did not dodge. He did not raise a hand to parry. He did not even blink. The dark matter spear struck the center of Goku's chest and simply ceased to be. There was no explosion, no shockwave, no scattering of light. The annihilating energy met the jet-black scales of the Void Dragon and dissolved into nothingness, swallowed by the infinite hunger of the dead galaxy burning within Goku's veins. The general froze, its immortal arm trembling as the impossible reality of the situation set in. Its ultimate attack had not been blocked. It had been effortlessly consumed. Goku's abyssal eyes slowly locked onto the terrified general. The air grew impossibly cold as the dragon god raised a single, black-clawed hand. Martial arts, at its highest pinnacle, is a dialogue of spirits. It is a philosophy built upon the foundation of self-improvement, respect for the opponent, and the pursuit of a perfect, harmonious strike. The warrior from Earth had spent a lifetime mastering this dialogue, speaking to gods, emperors, and assassins through the clash of fists and the flare of golden ki. But as Goku lowered his hand toward the paralyzed vanguard commander, the universe understood a terrifying truth. The dialogue was over. What the Void Dragon God was about to unleash was not martial arts, it was apex predation. The Dark General, recovering from the shock of its ultimate attack being passively devoured, instinctively attempted to retreat. It folded the fabric of the dimension around itself, preparing to step into a subspace pocket to reassess this impossible threat. Goku did not chase. He did not flare an aura or utilize the instantaneous movement of the yard rats. He simply looked at the space where the general stood, and the concept of distance ceased to exist. It was a movement that broke the minds of the observing deities. Goku did not cross the physical plane. He deleted the void between himself and his prey, appearing instantaneously face-to-face with the ancient demon. The air pressure alone from his sudden manifestation ruptured the eardrums of the remaining 4 generals, tearing a vacuum through the battlefield. Before the vanguard commander could even process the geographical impossibility, Goku struck. There was no wind-up, no martial stance, only the terrifying efficiency of a cosmic executioner. His right hand, now tipped with razor-sharp, dark matter talons, plunged forward. The generals of Akumo were cloaked in invincible armor, forged from the primordial nothingness that existed before Zeno ever conceived of light. It was an armor that had withstood the birth and death of countless timelines. Yet, against the claws of the platinum dragon turned Void God, it offered the resistance of wet paper. Goku's hand effortlessly pierced the center of the general's chest, the sickening crunch of immortal bone echoing through the silent cosmos. The entity let out a high-pitched, agonizing screech, its body flailing as it desperately tried to call upon its infinite regeneration. The dark, viscous energy of the void swirled around the wound, attempting to stitch the shattered flesh back together. But Goku's vertical, abyssal pupils narrowed. The purple veins along his arm pulsed with the agonizing weight of the dead galaxy he harbored, and a localized gravitational singularity bloomed within the general's chest cavity. The regeneration was instantly negated. The void energy was violently ripped from the general's control, siphoned directly into the chaotic maelstrom of Goku's own body. The general's eyes widened in absolute horror. It was not just dying. It was being erased, consumed to feed the very monster that stood before it. In a final, desperate bid for survival, The commander raised its arms, condensing all its remaining power into a self-destruct sequence meant to take the entire sector down with it. Goku did not even grant it the dignity of a final attack. From the shadows behind the Dragon God, a massive, spiked appendage whipped forward with the kinetic force of a dying star. It was Goku's tail, thick, armored, and devastatingly lethal. The tail lashed out in a blinding blur of black scales, wrapping around the general's throat and snapping its immortal spine with a resounding, thunderous crack that shook the rotting planets below. The demon went limp, its self-destruct sequence fizzling out into a harmless wisp of dark smoke. But Goku was not finished. The fusion of creation and destruction required constant fuel, and the boy who once spared the universe's greatest tyrants was now bound by the horrific hunger of his new form. With a sickeningly smooth motion, Goku planted his foot upon the general's ruined chest and tore. With his bare hands, he ripped the immortal entity in two. A geyser of abyssal pitch-black blood erupted into the vacuum of space, immediately drawn into the gravitational pull of Goku's aura, painting his dark scales with the life force of the fallen god. He stood there, holding the severed halves of Akumo's greatest warrior, his expression completely unchanged. He was deaf to the grotesque squelch of the flesh, blind to the horrific nature of his own actions. He merely dropped the remnants into the eternal abyss below and turned his terrifying, emotionless gaze toward the remaining four generals. For the first time since their creation, the immortal spawn of the void took a collective step backward. Fear is a concept reserved for mortals. For eons, the elite spawn of the void had watched timelines wither and gods weep, entirely insulated from the dread of non-existence. They were the apex, the ultimate entropy. But as the ruined halves of their vanguard commander vanished into the cold expanse, a primordial chill gripped the remaining four dark generals. They were no longer fighting a martial artist who sought to test his limits. They were trapped in a cage with a cosmic cleansing, an entity that had rewritten the rules of survival. The second general, a towering behemoth woven from shadows and collapsed gravity, panicked. Driven by a terror it had never known, it threw its hands forward, violently folding the localized space-time continuum to birth a supermassive black hole directly on top of the Dragon God. The gravitational pull was absolute, a maelstrom of dark energy meant to crush matter, light, and soul down to a subatomic singularity. The battlefield darkened as the event horizon roared to life, violently consuming the surrounding starlight. But the Void Dragon did not yield to gravity. He commanded it. From the absolute center of the crushing darkness, two jet-black, clawed hands breached the singularity. Goku gripped the very edges of the black hole's event horizon. His musculature bulged, the luminescent purple veins along his arms burning with the raging furnace of a dead galaxy. With a sickening, catastrophic tear that echoed across the 12 universes, Goku physically pried the black hole open. He stepped through the ruptured physics of the cosmos, as if walking through a gentle breeze. Before the behemoth could even register the impossibility of the act, Goku's palm enclosed its face. He condensed the stolen gravity of the shattered black hole into a single point within his grip. The immortal skull imploded instantly, reduced to scattered cosmic ash in the palm of a mortal-turned monster. What followed was a symphony of carnage, orchestrated in the key of absolute zero. The third general, shrieking in despair, launched a desperate, blinding volley of dark matter spears, each carrying enough concentrated malice to erase a solar system. Goku did not bother to dodge. He simply walked forward. The spears struck his jet-black scales and shattered harmlessly, their energy absorbed into the abyssal hunger of his aura. Without breaking his agonizingly calm stride, Goku swung his arm. The strike was devoid of martial grace. It was pure, unadulterated execution. He severed the general's arms at the shoulders, then drove his knee through the immortal's chest, shattering its core and absorbing its shrieking soul into the void of his own body. the tragedy of the massacre hung heavy over the rotting universe. This was not the thrill of combat the Saiyan race lived for. There was no joy, no testing of limits, no mutual respect between warriors. The boy from Mount Paozu, the pure-hearted savior who had once offered energy to Frieza and spared the prince of all Saiyans, was burying himself alive beneath a mountain of divine corpses. Goku's draconian face remained completely devoid of emotion, a cold, platinum-like mask of apathy. He was committing unspeakable, brutal atrocities, permanently staining his soul with an irredeemable darkness just to buy the multiverse a single tomorrow. The fourth general, a master of dimensional manipulation, abandoned all pride. It ripped a jagged tear in the fabric of reality, desperately throwing itself into a localized pocket dimension to hide in the abstract spaces between universes. The rift snapped shut, leaving behind only the cold silence of the battlefield. Survival seemed assured. Goku paused, his abyssal eyes turning toward the empty vacuum where the rift had vanished. He did not move to reopen it with his hands. Instead, the massive armored tail behind him whipped forward with blinding, impossible speed. It struck the exact coordinate where the rift had closed, piercing the invisible wall of space-time itself like a spear through glass. Reality shattered like a mirror. A muffled, terrified scream echoed from the dimension beyond. With a violent, merciless yank, Goku dragged the thrashing entity back into the physical realm, its immortal body already half-crushed by the suffocating coils of the dragon's tail. Suspended in the cold vacuum of space, the general was methodically, brutally dismembered, its dark ki drained to fuel the monstrous form of the universe's ultimate protector. The fifth and final general did not attempt to fight, nor did it attempt to flee. Having witnessed the systematic, effortless butchery of its immortal kin, the ancient entity simply dropped to its knees amidst the floating debris of a ruined sector. There was no pride left in the abyss, only the paralyzing gravity of absolute doom. Goku approached, his massive frame drifting through the vacuum without a sound, the chaotic energies of his aura swallowing the meager starlight. He stopped before the kneeling demon. A single, dark-taloned hand rested gently atop the general's head. There was no struggle. A blinding flash of abyssal violet light illuminated the cosmic graveyard for a fraction of a second, and the entity simply dissolved into a flurry of dark ash, its primordial essence drawn seamlessly into the dragon god's suffocating aura. And then a profound, horrifying silence descended upon the battlefield. The deafening roar of cosmic war, the violent tearing of dimensional fabrics, the agonized shrieks of dying immortals. All of it vanished. The silence that replaced it was not the peaceful quiet of a restored universe, but the heavy, oppressive stillness of a graveyard. The only discernible movement was the slow, rhythmic dripping of abyssal blood from Goku's clawed fingertips, the droplets vaporizing into dark mist before they even touched the unseen ground. The 12 universes, still rotting from Akumo's invasive presence, seemed to collectively hold their breath. The vanguard of the void, an army that had terrorized the timelines and brought angels to their knees, had been utterly annihilated by a single being. Standing amidst the absolute ruin of Akumo's greatest warriors, Goku's massive chest heaved in a slow, controlled rhythm. Beneath his jet-black, platinum-hardened scales, a catastrophic war was being waged. The purest energies of creation, gifted by Zalama, clashed violently with the devastating, endless hunger of the void and the billions of souls from the dead galaxy he had consumed. His luminescent purple veins pulsed erratically, threatening to tear his physical form apart from the inside out. Yet, through sheer, unimaginable willpower, the Saiyan held the paradox together. He was a walking singularity, an unnatural eclipse masking the once blinding light of his own soul. This quiet aftermath laid bare the profound tragedy of his metamorphosis. Somewhere, buried beneath an ocean of draconian malice and cosmic duty, was the boy from Mount Paozu. That boy had loved the simple thrill of a fair fight. He had sought out the strongest opponents in creation not to conquer them, but to test his own limits, often extending a hand of mercy to those who deserved it least. But that boy could not save the multiverse from the father of Zeno, the golden warrior of hope with his radiant hair and pure heart was vastly insufficient against the primordial rot of the abyss. To slay the monsters that crawled out of the dark, Goku had been forced to become the absolute apex of their kind. He had stripped away his own innocence, trading the divine tranquility of ultra instinct for the brutal, unforgiving mechanics of execution. He had become the very nightmare he had sworn to protect the innocent from. Slowly, Goku raised his hands, his vertical violet pupils tracing the lines of abyssal blood staining his claws. There were no tears, no shouts of anguish, no desperate pleas to the heavens for forgiveness. The emotional toll of severing immortal lives and devouring dead galaxies was heavier than any physical blow he had ever endured. Yet he accepted this damnation without a single hint of regret. The moral stains on his soul were the price of existence. He would bear the sins of the cosmos so that others could live in the light. The vanguard was broken. The path to the throne of ruin was clear. Goku lowered his hands, his spiked tail slowly sweeping behind him as he turned his gaze upward toward the highest peak of the rotting realm. The silence was absolute, but the true war had not yet begun. At the absolute zenith of the ruined 12th universe, where the boundaries of time and space bled into the primordial nothingness, sat a throne carved from the crystallized despair of erased timelines. Upon this monument to entropy rested Akumo. The father of all, the progenitor of the Omni Kings, watched the cosmic graveyard below with ancient, unblinking eyes. He did not mourn his fallen vanguard. The systematic slaughter of his 5 greatest generals provoked neither rage nor sorrow within his abyssal heart. To a being who had existed before the very concept of light, they were merely dust returning to dust, a momentary distraction in the endless stretch of eternity. Instead, slowly, the heavy shadows obscuring his ancient face began to part. A wide, terrifying smile carved itself across the dark visage of the primordial god. For eons uncounted, Akumo had been suffocated by an absolute, maddening boredom. He had watched universes bloom and wither in the blink of an eye. He had watched his children, the Zenos, play with galaxies like fragile glass spheres, wiping out trillions of lives with a careless wave of their hands. He had waited in the suffocating silence of the void for a singularity capable of offering even a fraction of a true challenge. Every deity, every angel, every mortal that had ever dared to ascend had eventually crumbled under the sheer weight of his cosmic authority. They were all bound by the laws of a reality he had authored. But as he looked down at the void dragon god, at the jet-black scales dripping with immortal blood, at the catastrophic fusion of Zalama's divine creation and his own native abyss, Akumo realized a thrilling truth. The Scion was no longer a mortal usurper playing dress-up in divine power. Goku had shed his humanity, his heroism, and his mercy, forging himself into a genuine monster. By devouring a dead galaxy and absorbing the rot of the void, the warrior had stepped outside the boundaries of the narrative. He was a perfect, beautiful anomaly. The smile widened, exposing teeth that seemed to swallow the ambient light. The usurper had finally earned his audience. Akumo placed his hands upon the armrests of his throne. As the ancient god slowly rose to his feet, the physical reaction of the multiverse was immediate and catastrophic. The cosmic pressure shifted so violently that the fundamental laws of physics fractured across the remaining cosmos. The concept of gravity inverted. Distant galaxies shuddered and tore apart, their celestial bodies groaning under the sheer, suffocating weight of the true god of destruction stepping onto the battlefield. The air itself turned to jagged glass. Far below, standing amidst the floating ash of the vanguard, Goku did not flinch. The overwhelming pressure of Akumo's presence pressed down upon him, threatening to crush his platinum-hardened bones into powder. But the dragon god simply anchored his massive tail into the fabric of space. He tilted his head upward, his vertical violet pupils locking onto the primordial darkness descending from the heavens. There were no words exchanged between the apex predator of the new era and the architect of the old. There was only the silent, gravitational pull of absolute inevitability. The unstoppable force had finally met the immovable object, and the stage was set not just for the survival of the 12 universes, but for the fundamental right of existence itself. The dying stars of the 12th universe flickered out one by one, leaving only the cold, breathless dark to witness the collision of gods.